I've got Chris Rigg down.
Oh, damn it.
Although I said that.
So I'll say Sheffield United to finish 18th.
Oh.
But I just think Stuart Webber probably held Daniel Farke back a little bit.
Ben's thinking.
Oh, continue on. I'm not automatically.
Okay.
saying
Who are you
that.
thinking about as well? Hello guys and welcome to the Sportsman Untitled. You can see I've had my hair cut. I've got a new shirt on. Can only mean one thing. The championship season is here and I've got a very special panel here to discuss the upcoming season. Gab Sutton, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks Simon. Thanks for having me.
Got Justin Peach from the Second Tier podcast.
Yeah,
Justin?
Always happy.
Excited Derby back in the Second Tier. We'll come to them later. I've got Adam Sopf from Lower Tier. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you
First
very
appearance.
much. Thank you.
And of course Benjamin Bloom. Ben, how are you getting on?
No haircut, no new t-shirt.
Oh, you're very disappointed with that. Right, we're going to crack on through the championship promotion contenders, or who I've grouped as the contenders. Don't take offence. And we'll start with the favourites to win the league. Leeds United. Now, Archie Gray has left. Gab, we'll start with you.
Sure.
Somerville might be on his way out. Probably will depart this window. Are we still confident about their chances?
Top two, yes, I think so. I think they're the most obvious contender for promotion if you're looking at the big picture of the championship at the moment. Crescencio Somerville was the best player in the championship last season. To my eye, so losing him to West Ham would be a big blow, but at the same time, they are going to get 34 million for him, so hopefully they can reinvest some of that money. And they've got some players like Matteo Joseph, who apparently isn't going to go out on loan as was initially mooted. He's played really well in pre-season. He's a Spain under-21s international. He could be one to watch this season, along with some of those other attacking players that really hit the big numbers.
And Ben, you mentioned that Daniel Farke is going for his fourth season in a row, getting 90 points in the championship. Do they need to be as good as they were last season to get promoted?
Absolutely not. No, it's a complete freak, wasn't it, last season? What was it? 97, 96, 90, 87. I reckon minus 10 off all of that. So I'm not suggesting Leeds will score 80 points and get promoted, but you would think somewhere in the mid-80s would do it. And he just knows the course, doesn't he, Farke, in terms of churning out those wins. And in each one of those seasons as well, it's always a big win streak as well, 6, 7, 8 games in a row. And the team barely changes. So depending on what Gab's kind of raised in terms of will the level of player be as good? No, surely the standard isn't as high at the top of the table this season.
How hard is it to replace someone like Archie Gray and Somerville? I mean, these are players that are above championship level for Leeds, and now they've got to find a way to work without them and be just as good as they were.
I think because of how good they were last season for Leeds, it's sort of impossible to replace them both. You'll never find someone that scores as much as Somerville for them on the wing. Archie Gray, a young talent coming through, they'll never find something like that. All there is Harry Gray coming through now as well. So obviously he's only 15 now, but maybe next season he might break through. But yeah, it's meant to be good young talent. So.
And Justin, Daniel Farke succeeded at the championship many times, but he's never done it at the Premier League. So if we're looking forward, is he the man to take Leeds into the Premier League and keep them there?
I mean, I'm a big Daniel Farke fan, so naturally I'll say yes. I think as well at Norwich, he was always, I wouldn't say he's been handicapped by Stuart Webber's transfer dealings, but players have been sold like Emi Buendia and not replaced. The recruitment while they were in the Premier League wasn't great. I think if you discount the first season, because that was a bit of a whirlwind for everyone at Norwich, but then the second time around, Buendia then left and it just wasn't
Taking a knife to a gunfight, was
exactly.
it? Webber said, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, there are teams that can do it. Yeah, they don't have to break the bank. But I just think Stuart Webber probably held Daniel Farke back a little bit. I don't think that will happen with Leeds. Obviously, there's the Red Bull relationship now, which will be a big thing going into next season. They've got the pulling power to bring players in because it's Leeds United as well. So I think Daniel Farke at Leeds is a completely different kettle of fish to Daniel Farke at Norwich.
And we'll come to our predictions at the end of the video, so stick around to see what we all think will happen. But does anyone here think Leeds won't finish in the top 6?
No.
So we're all pretty confident on their chances this season.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Burnley, and I'll open this up to the floor by saying 2 words. Scott Parker, thoughts? Who wants to jump in?
He does well with big teams, so I think they'll do well again, but I haven't got him as top 2. I think playoffs for them, probably, in my opinion.
It's like the impossible debate, isn't it? Because the argument, one side is kind of reasonable, had the parachute payments, had big teams, and then the fans of those teams say got promoted in spite of them, and then the argument the other way, well, he got over the line every time, didn't he? So proof's in the pudding this season. Would you be surprised if they were kind of lingering there and we were having exactly the same conversations about Bournemouth and Fulham as we were having again? So proof's in the pudding, but season could end and we've learned absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I think this is Scott Parker's hardest set of circumstances, though, because obviously you've got Burnley, who are reeling from a relatively poor season in the Premier League under Vincent Kompany. Very clear philosophy, did change towards the end of last season, but he's got to pick the team up like he did at Fulham, but he's got a massive squad of 37 that he's got to deal with. And there's players that are potentially going out the door as well. So I think this is a harder set of circumstances than he had at Fulham coming down, because obviously he was in charge of them before they were in the Championship, and then obviously with Bournemouth, where they had Dominic Solanke amongst others, where he could build a little bit more of a team there. So yeah, I think this is the place to really judge Scott Parker.
To add something into that, Gab, Burnley have been preparing for this Championship season with Vincent Kompany in charge for 6 months of last Premier League season, it felt like. How much of a disruption is that going to have? And I know now it's Parker in place, but they haven't planned for this, have they, really?
Well, I think Scott Parker's main plus on his CV, if you like, is that he has won those 2 promotions with recently relegated clubs, but I've never been hugely convinced by his teams at that level. And when he was at Fulham, he had the individual goal-scoring ability of Aleksandar Mitrovic, who, I hate to use the word cheat code at this level, but he is a little bit of that. And then Bournemouth, where there was also a fair amount of individual quality as well, with the likes of Dominic Solanke, of course, and Philip Billing. So for me, I'm a little bit unconvinced about Scott Parker and whether, and I do wonder whether his conservatism might actually hold Burnley back a little bit. So that's why personally I don't see Burnley actually finishing inside the top 6.
It's a big squad as well, as you touched upon.
Too big? Is it too big possibly?
I think
37 players.
Obviously work's going to be done, isn't it, to trim that, but what players are going to lose in those scenarios? They've got decisions to make in goal as well. Ben, we'll come to you on this one. James Trafford, do you think he's going to be number 1? Obviously they've bought in Hladky, is it, from...
Hladky, I mean, look, I'm the wrong person to ask about Hladky after last season, because you're just going to get a completely biased answer.
That's what I want. He's the best keeper in the world.
He's not the best keeper. He was in an amazing situation and system under an extraordinary managerial performance, and he'll go down in history at Ipswich. But that's not the conversation now. I just don't see how you're dropping 20 million quid on a goalkeeper and A, not playing him, or B, not selling him for a ton of money. But Gab will know better than me. League One at Bolton, he was brilliant, wasn't he, Trafford? Just didn't happen.
I think jumping up 2 leagues was a massive risk, because I think Burnley at the time had Aro Muric. I think a lot of Burnley fans were disappointed that they were going for that Vincent Kompany persisted with James Trafford, and maybe that was one of the mistakes that he made. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Hladky gets on.
First thing I'm going to ask you, back to Burnley. They're second favourites for the league. Are they deserving of that tag? Gab, you've already said your doubts. Justin, what do you think?
I think it's just the automatic assumption that a team coming down from the Premier League are going to bounce straight back up again. But I actually think this Championship is a lot more competitive than what we've seen in previous years, just because there's a lot of uncertainty of teams. And we've mentioned the Scott Parker tax. There's also the massive squad. There's players potentially leaving. Them being second favourites is a bit of a surprise, but as I say, it's where people are going to put the money on. It's just an automatic choice, isn't it?
Adam?
I think the point, that they've come down from the Premier League. We see teams all the time now bounce down and bounce straight back up. So I haven't put them in my top 2 now, but you know what? The power sheet payments are ridiculous, so it'll easily bounce straight back up for me.
Okay, right, let's actually talk about Middlesbrough now. They've made a trio of signings, I think, Aidan Morris, Luke Ayling and Delano Bergzorg. Is that enough to carry them and carry this Michael Carrick team from, I think, 8th they finished last season into the playoffs?
I think Aidan Morris is an interesting signing. Obviously, coming from the MLS, not watched him every week, but reading up about him, he's a bit more of a robust midfielder to one they've got. So there's a lightweight midfield there that you'd argue it could have been viewed as lightweight midfield last season with Barlas, Hackney, Azaz towards the end of January onwards. I think Morris comes in, adds a little bit of robustness. There's also a quality final ball with him as well. So I think adding him is quite a smart choice. Bergzorg's a bit of chaos, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think it's an intriguing signing.
Yeah, I think I'm not necessarily sure about how Bergzorg's going to get on. Hopefully, he'll be more in a more creative system than he was in at Huddersfield. But the big thing that stands out to me. Simon, about Middlesbrough. Not so much. I'm not so much looking at it as those three signings elevate them from 8th into the top 6, but as much as they finished 4 points off the players last season and they could barely get their best 11 together. And because they had international call-ups, they had suspensions, they had injuries. And I think that made it very difficult for Michael Carrick. And with all that in mind, I don't think it was a bad season. So I think that with a more consistent best 11, I think they're a top 6 side.
And we all like Michael Carrick, don't we? Think he's a pretty decent man.
Yeah, he's not bad.
Not bad.
I still find it a bit confusing, Simon, because you could put out the argument that he landed with Ramsey, Akpom, Archer, and Giles all at once in his first job, straight in there, fresh coat of paint, bam, in a season that we'd probably all agree where the door opened up because of Watford and Norwich stinking out with the parachute payments, and then you got Luton and Coventry in the playoffs as well at that point. Sunderland as well from League One into the...
They also had a home leg 0-0 against Coventry.
Right.
Drawn the away leg. It was a great opportunity, wasn't it?
Yeah, and so I want Michael Carrick to be a really good manager because I loved him as a player, and that would kind of suit my narrative for him. But I still think there's something to prove for Carrick. But I think Latte Lath finishing 11 in 12, 11 goals in 12.
Can
if you
I
can
just
pick that up, then you've got a goal scorer. Then
absolutely,
maybe the hole's filled.
But you included Akpom there, Ben, as one of your examples. Akpom before the 22-23 season, no one was talking about him.
Rubbish.
He was going to be offloaded. So surely you've got to give Carrick some kudos from a coaching perspective, actually getting the best out of some of those players
and putting him in the 10 spot as well. Is really clever.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one thing having the players, but you've also got to be able to get the best out of them.
Let's see him do it again, then, Gab.
Absolutely.
Could be another top 6 finish for Middlesbrough. Another team coming down from the Premier League, Luton Town. We feel like last summer they made signings kind of expecting to come down. They were sensible, weren't they? We were all kind of expecting this to happen. Now they're in this position. Adam, how do you feel they'll go?
I think they'll do well. I love Rob Edwards as a manager. I think we did at Forest Green with Luton when they went up as well. Even last season in the Premier League, they weren't that bad compared to the other two teams that went down, Burnley and Sheffield United. But they did well against the big teams like Arsenal, Man City at home, even though they didn't take as many points as they'd have hoped to in those games. But I think they come down, they've kept most of the players from last season, and I think they'll do well next season.
And Carl Morris scored double figures, I think, in the Premier League, and you look at Luton's strike force and you think they've got to go pretty well, right?
So, can I give you a completely non-football bit of analysis about Luton?
Please do.
Surely, I make it Luton have had like 8 or 9 seasons in a row where they've either punched their weight or above their weight. They've just been amazing, haven't they?
Yeah.
Through League Two, I think it was like playoff miss, playoff up, automatic, survive in COVID, replace Graham Jones, stable playoffs, win playoffs, Premier League, don't disgrace yourself. They've just been incredible. And the only negative, I know you think Luton, with their intelligence, with a year one parachute payment, you think promoted, right? But surely they have to have a below average season, like 1 in 10 at some point. That's the only kind of thing I've got against Luton.
But it's not as if though that's all been down to one. It's not as if it's sometimes you get clubs in the EFL like Accrington Stanley or like Wycombe Wanderers who have had all their success under one manager, if you like. With Luton, I think you had John Still getting them up. You had Nathan Jones over 2 spells. Now you've got Rob Edwards, and I think it's the operation in place.
Absolutely.
Wilkinson, the chairman, does incredible work. Gary Sweet, the CEO. They've got some really smart people on recruitment. So I think for me, it's the structure of the club that allows. And actually, if you look at the squad at the moment, I would say you've got 20 players there who you think, they can really make an impact to a.
I agree totally, Gab.
Squad.
It's just hard to deliver every year,
Cool.
and they do.
Yeah.
So I totally agree that operationally no one's been better, have they?
But this is the first season they're performing under expectation. This is the first season where
Agreed.
everyone's going to be
That's
going
true.
like, you're pushing for promotion this season.
Yeah.
That might play a role in the pressure surrounding the club because they've got to rise to it. They've got to keep rising to it. And actually, I wouldn't say there's unrest on social media from supporters, but a lot of them are quite disappointed by the lack of movement, lack of signings. So again, there's expectation from their own fan base that is going to push the pressure up a little bit more.
Do you also think they've reached their goal? They went from non-league to the Premier League. Now they're dropping down. I'm looking for negatives here because I can't see many. Just because they've hit that goal and they're dropping down a level, is there going to be that same desire, the magic of the Kenny? all of those things we've talked about over the years.
Or conversely, does being in the Premier League and going to places like Anfield actually satiate this appetite to go back into the Premier League? Because Rob Edwards is an ambitious young manager. He's made decisions in his career that have helped him get to a higher level quicker than he might have done if he'd been more loyal, you could argue. I'm thinking specifically at the move from Forest Green to Watford. So I think he's a really ambitious manager, and I imagine that's going to rub off on the players.
And do we all agree that they are in the best position of the relegated trio?
100%.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Ben's thinking.
I'll continue on. I think I'm not automatically.
Okay.
saying
Who are you
that.
thinking about as well?
Well, that was the problem. Is it you're going to answer exactly who is? I don't know. I think Justin hit on something, and it's not necessarily a parachute payment home run for the top two in the way that it was last season.
Right, let's move on. I had this team in my playoffs. I had them in the promotion race. And over the last week, I've kind of become shyer and shyer about their chances because I'm talking about West Brom, who have had an exodus of players this summer. Thomas Asante, OK Kuslu, Cedric Kipre and Townsend all look like they're going or have already left the club. Where do we start, Ben, here? Let's start with you. Carlos Corberán's a brilliant manager. But these exits, they're going to have an impact, aren't they?
It's a bit disappointing, isn't it? Because we were worried about Mr. Lai, the owner. He went out, and Mr. Patel comes in during last season. And you think, great, okay, West Brom can go again, and we're all sorted. And yeah, you're right. And it does feel a little bit like, well, you got Carlos Corberán. He's really smart, really great game prep, potentially best defensive sort of coordinated manager in the league, but you know what happens when you consistently take away a team's star players. And going back even to year 2 of the parachute payments, it was Jed Wallace and John Swift on free transfers. So that big advantage you get with the year 1 parachute payment and then the Premier League squad, that's not there anymore. And it's asking a lot of even a brilliant manager like Carlos Corberán to continually have them in the top 6.
Got any fears or worries about West Brom?
I think the Devante Cole signing is very interesting for him, to be honest. I've always thought he was just a League One striker at best, really. So to get a move to someone like West Brom as well in the Championship is just crazy. They've lost Thomas Asante as well and replaced him with Cole, and to me it's just not good enough as a replacement. So
yeah, I've always felt like Devante Cole's had the talent to maybe play higher, but I think in terms of an application and I'm really going to go and grab the bull by the horns, I've never quite seen that in Devante Cole personally. And for me, he did actually score 20 odd goals for Barnsley last season in League One, but if you look at his form in the second half of the season, it was a massive drop off. So I think to say that he's going to be the one that fires you to promotion, I think might be a bit of a step. So I'm not sure about that. And I also wonder, with those sales of key players, is Shilan Patel, the new owner, trying to balance some of the books from the build-up of problems that West Brom have had over the last 10 odd years, or whatever it is. So, because the club has been run very badly before him, and maybe he feels like he's got to redress the balance a little bit, but that could have a knock-on effect on the pitch.
Yeah, I will add that Corberán did get Danny Ward's best goal-scoring season out of him for Huddersfield. 15, 16 goals from him. So maybe you can churn something out of Devante Cole as well.
Corberán's almost the worst position he's in, the better he performs.
Exactly.
He's that type of manager.
He's that type of manager. So, I mean, maybe it's a bit of a bold strategy by West Brom for taking away all his star assets to give him.
By the way, if
bits and bobs.
Devante Cole went to Luton, we'd all be saying he'd score 20 goals. Let's just get a fest out of it.
Yeah, but I think it's just that Corberán impact. I naively, again, like you, Simon, put West Brom automatically in my top 6 because it's Corberán. And I almost feel like I want to keep them there. I mainly just convinced myself over the last 30 seconds that maybe Corberán can get more out of this team.
It's that battle, isn't it, between arguably the best manager in the division, who we all think is magnificent, and a squad that is getting weaker and weaker. And how do those match up? Because there's a chance. If Corberán doesn't like what's going on at West Brom, if he feels like the rug's being pulled from underneath him, could he walk away?
Well,
yes,
he
was out at Huddersfield when he smelt that early and he got out, didn't he?
And that was only a couple of weeks before the season started as well. So he has done it before, but I think this is maybe slightly different. I think maybe they're building towards something as opposed to stripping assets.
In fantasy land, then, if Corberán's not West Brom manager, where do they finish?
Low mid-table.
At mid-table as well, yeah.
We'll agree with that.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, right. I'm going to let you guys do the talking on this one because we're coming to Coventry and I'm not allowed to get too excited. Am I allowed to get excited, Gab? Bring me back down to earth.
I mean, I actually can I reveal my predictions?
Of course you can.
Yeah, okay, right. So I just left Coventry out of my top six, but I kind of instinctively I wanted to because I felt like a lot of good work was done last season to reduce reliance on both loanees, which had been the case the year before, and also star individuals like Hamer and Gyökeres, who previously Coventry fans have been able to reel off those 2 or 3 best players. Whereas I think this time around there's more of a there's more players who could be among their better players, but no star individuals, if you like. And I've kind of settled on the absence of that kind of firepower and stardust, if you like, as being one of the reasons why they might just miss out. But I also like what they're building under a really reliable manager.
Justin,
I completely agree. I wouldn't predict Coventry to finish outside the top 6. I'd actually predict them to finish in the top 6. Where in the top 6, I don't quite know yet. I think I'd probably make a more definitive prediction as the transfer window goes on. But like Gab was saying, I think almost removing that star individual has almost helped them because there's players there who it just feels like a better balanced squad. You've got Haji Wright, who's going to be good for double figures. Ellis Sims, post Maidstone hat-trick in January, became an unstoppable number 9, and then they've added depth to the ranks with Brandon Thomas-Asante. Victor Torp, I think, has got a lot of potential. You know, it took time for him to settle in. There's just a lot of positives to get really excited by, which is why, like, you sort of take Callum O'Hare out of this situation. I'm not really that bothered. Yeah, just really blunt.
The recruitment, obviously, Redoni and Mason Clark, it's been added to an attack which now has more depth. I mean, like you say, Thomas Asante, Mason Clark, Sakamoto as well coming back, and he was injured last year. There's a chance that this team could be one of the most exciting attacking teams in the division.
Definitely, yeah. I put them in my top 6. I think Mark Robbins is a great manager as well. And they sort of keep hitting new heights every season. I mean, got to playoff final season before, got to the FA Cup semi-final, looking up to get to the final.
We don't talk about the FA Cup.
So unlucky as well in the semi-final. So I think they keep hitting new goals and new heights. So I think this season could be a playoff finish for them, maybe playoff winners.
Oh yeah, and I think you can almost, and I'm not a Coventry fan, but I'm going to be really kind to Coventry. I think you can almost explain away last season through a lot of things. Hamer and Gyökeres go in. Sims and Wright took ages to kind of bed in, didn't they? Ridiculous fixture congestion at the end of the season because of the cup run, which played very nicely to Ipswich's favour, which we knew it would, looking from a few months out. But if you're tracking that rise up, one little blob down, it does feel like you're then going to write it back out and they're going to be nearer. What, 9th last year?
Yeah.
I think they're going to be nearer to 5th where they were the season before than 9th. And I agree with your point, Justin, that sometimes it's better to have... Kieran Dyer explained this to me very well when he was sold from Ipswich and replaced with John McGreal, Gary Croft, Jermaine Wright and Marcus Stewart. He said, was I better than all of those players? Yes. Would I beat them in a 4-on-1? No. The squad is better with 4 good players than maybe your Swedish superstar striker or your electric Brazilian midfielder.
There's only one concern I have with Cov really this season. I'm very excited about all the attacking players, but it feels like there's no real leaders or experience, especially if we're looking in defence. I mean, we've had Carl McFadden, Liam Kelly left this summer, Matt Godden left this summer, Simon Moore as well was important.
85 Ash.
Oh, I'm just about to say it as well. Yeah.
85 Ash has gone and been replaced by 2 younger coaches. So I feel like excitement, definitely. But is that going to play a big part when it comes to the crunch time?
I think, yeah, I mean, you look at the likes of Casey Palmer, Ben Sheaf, Jamie Allen, these are all older, experienced players, which is going to help. Right, there's no leader in the sense that there's no Carl McFadden, but I don't think that's a massive thing. I mean, how many games would McFadden have played this season if he'd have still been at the club? Probably 5 or 6 substitute appearances, see games out maybe. Yes, these players are good in the dressing room, but at the end of the day, again, we do have to remember that although Coventry do have a bit more money, they're probably investing that money into better quality as opposed to having players who are just going to hang around.
I think there'll be one big ticket sale before August the 31st as well, out of Coventry.
Yeah. What do you think Sheaf might go, do you reckon?
I can think of a good place in Suffolk for him to go if you wanted to. But I don't see you drop the money that they've dropped on Rudoni and Thomas Asante, if you're not possibly... I mean, don't get me wrong, they might be perfectly poised, but Coventry have been so smart getting in front of, you know, the pluses and minuses in the recruitment, haven't they?
It's also the weakest area on the pitch in the squad in terms of central midfield. So if Sheaf is potentially on the way out, then some big incomings are going to be needed there. Right, let's have a little pause because I've got a little question for you to have a bit of a think about. We've been discussing some teams and some managers, but I want you to rank these 6 managers for me.
Go on then.
Daniel Farke, Scott Parker, Michael Carrick, Carlos Corberán, Mark Robins and Rob Edwards. So, I mean, I'll be putting Parker at the bottom of that list just so you all have a bit of a think for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually decided on my rankings, so I can go and then other people
Yes,
can challenge.
please do, Gab, please do.
So mine was Carlos Corberán, Mark Robins, Rob Edwards, trying to make sure who's the other one?
Carrick, Farker and...
Yeah, Carrick, Farker and Parker. There you go.
Interesting. So you've got a Daniel Farker as low as
5th
out of those 6?
Yeah.
It just depends on your context, doesn't it? Because the hot hand...
We don't need context.
The hot hand is Rob Edwards because he took Forest Green up. He was at Watford 5 minutes and then took Luton up and then did well in the Premier League. You can't really argue Daniel Farker. You can argue Norwich still had the parachute drip, but to jump from 13th to first, that was incredible. And then he did the whole year one parachute, 97 points, and he's got 90 again. So in terms of that output, that's
but Ben,
incredible.
That was in the 18-19 season. So if we're giving managers real credit for that, which I agree should still be relevant, but Chris Wilder did incredible work in 18-19, and his stock isn't considered on the same level now.
Daniel Farker scored 90 points twice since Chris Wilder did that, though.
That's true, yeah. But I'm just... Yeah, I'm not sure about Farker. I think he's... do you know what? I actually felt like the Leeds side, they were well organised and they had players going forward that could really cut teams open. But I didn't look at them and think, wow, that's an amazing all-round footballing side. So that's why I'd maybe have Farker on the lower end.
Adam, are you putting at the top of your list?
Top, I'd put Edwards, in my opinion, because of the Forest Green and Luton seasons that he had and the performance as well in the Premier League last season. I agree with Farker being low down, in my opinion, because I think as well, Leeds' team last season was a very good team to have, and they came just short, obviously. But I think they really could have pushed on and got promotion last season if, after the international break.
Was this not the hardest season in the last 20 years?
It really was, but their team was ridiculous, though. Do you know what I mean?
So was Leicester's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd say it was Leicester and Leeds, top 2 teams, really, last season, to watch anyway. But yeah.
I mean, Leeds were great to watch in transition through the individual players
Yeah.
that kept teams open, but I wouldn't say they were great to watch as a...
No, not great to watch, but they should have been a lot better than they were, I think. So,
Justin, go on.
I will put Daniel Farker top. I think I just think with the context of Leeds last season, in that they lost a lot of players in the summer. They took a while to get going because there's a big transition, and then post international break from March onwards, they had quite a few injuries. Daniel James wasn't fit. Jorginho Ruta wasn't fit. So the impact of their forward play was severely, impacted. And I just think if you're going to pick someone who's going to guarantee you promotion, you're going to pick the guy who's delivered 90 plus points.
Is that looking at it for the here and now, or looking at his career and what he's done in the past, though? Are you looking at who you want in charge of the Championship team going for promotion?
Absolutely. I'm going to go with Daniel Farker in that front. I don't
But
think...
over Carlos Corberán, though, Justin.
Yes.
Because Carlos Corberán as an underdog has taken Huddersfield to the playoff final on one of the lowest budgets.
Yeah, it's a good point. But again, that transfer from Norwich, from turning into a mid-table side to a ready-made Premier League
But
side.
you could argue Norwich were in a more stable position off the field. That was just after Stuart Webber came in as sporting director, whereas Carlos Corberán has worked under nowhere near the same structural
Norwich,
support.
I'm not having that. Norwich were not stable in 17-18. They brought Webber in. They completely recycled.
No, but Stuart Webber made a massive difference to the day-to-day operations at that time, which gave...
But they weren't
which
stable.
helped. No, I think so. I think they're
Norwich was stable in 17-18.
I think so, yeah.
They've run out of parachute payments and changed CEO and completely changed their first 11.
So they were relegated in 2017, right? 2016, sorry. So yeah, they were towards the end of their parachute cycle, yes.
No, they ran out, and then the next season he
Did
got
they
promoted.
sell Madison?
Yeah, this
and
Sold
that helped
Madison
them
in
get
17-18 and got promoted.
No, I think okay. So I take your point from a financial point of view, but an operational point of view, I think it was very different because you had Stuart Webber there, and they made all sorts of changes to the day-to-day running of the club. Whereas West Bromwich Albion have been in a position of absolute chaos, where they've had a distant owner who just has no care for the club at all, ran the club really unsustainably. There was no thought process behind the recruitment. I think before Corbrand came in, Steve Bruce ended up going back to the 1980s recruitment policy of signing players who his neighbour, signing his neighbour, or signing players, his family members. So all that sort of thing. Whereas Daniel Farker was working in a really smart operational structure that scouted players like Emi Buendia from across Europe. So I think that's a very different circumstances.
I know I'm biased here, but none of these managers are as good as Mark Robbins. No, none of these managers on this list would have got Coventry from League Two to the Championship playoff final, an FA Cup semi-final, playing at Birmingham, playing in Northampton, playing in Birmingham for 2 seasons, winning the League One title. None of these managers would do that.
None of those managers had Victor Gokre as a Gushamer. Just throw that one out there.
Who bought them?
Yeah, true.
Right, we're not going to come to a conclusion on that one. Let's talk about Sheffield United, because they have been, for me, the hardest team to predict in this Championship season. Obviously, coming down from the Premier League, I think they got like 19 points or something. Absolutely terrible. Adam, try and piece together what we've got going on there at Bramall Lane.
They've lost quite a few key players this summer as well, that have been their mainstays.
Points.
16 points.
I'll give them too much credit.
Yeah.
-2 as well, we must add in that they're starting.
Yeah,
this year.
exactly. Yeah. So they lost like mainstays that have been there for years in the summer. Replaced them well, some would say, with Burrows, O'Hare, and Moore as well. But I think after such a poor season last season, I think there's got to be some sort of, hangover, definitely, for this season. But then again, when they went down last time in the COVID season, they had an awful season, similar to last season, pretty much. And they got playoffs the following season, so you never know. So hard to call, though, isn't it?
And Ben, thoughts on Chris Wilder at the minute? It feels like his star isn't shining quite as brightly as it once did.
No, and like 2-3 weeks ago, I was really worried about Sheffield United, because you're like looking and there's no signings, there's the minus points. Prince Abdullah wants rid of it, and I take the points the guys are making about Chris Wilder 2024 not being Chris Wilder 2019. I'm far more encouraged with what's happened in the last couple of weeks. I've got to say they've brought in some players that you would say function at the top end of the Championship, and like Kiefer Moore's missed the promotion. Now Callum O'Hare, who knows,
He'll be brilliant.
Could be a really good one, couldn't it? And yeah, I'd open it up about Chris Wilder. Are you going to get more like Chris Wilder 2019, in which case they'll get promoted, or are you going to get the Chris Wilder that was at Middlesbrough or Watford, in which case they probably won't?
Well, I think there's 2 angles to look at this. I think from a Unity point of view, I don't think where Chris Wilder's stock is particularly relevant, because Chris Wilder's Chris Wilder, right? And I think for most Blades fans, he's such a club legend. He has so much pull, and fans feel so connected to him that I think they'll rally behind him almost come hell or high water. At the same time, I think the game's evolved. Some of the ideas that Chris Wilder had when he first came in at Sheffield United are now kind of commonplace, and he's got to find a new tactical ideas to sort of stay on top of the curve, if you like. And I'm not sure I necessarily back Chris Wilder to do that. Hopefully he does, because I've got a lot of respect for what he's achieved. But let's come to the squad. I take Ben's point that they've made some really exciting additions. And I think about half their squad, you're thinking, wow, these are top-end Championship players. But I also think half their first 11, you've got major question marks as well, let alone before you come to depth. So for me, I'm a little bit apprehensive about Sheffield United. I think they're going to be a bit imbalanced this season. I've actually gone the other way, and I think they'll go into the bottom half, even though I can see the appeal with some of those signings.
I think this is where it's so interesting that the season starts with a month to go of the transfer window, isn't it? Because I'm going to gamble on the fact that they're going to have a good end of the window and bring in those players to fill the positions you've mentioned. Mm-hmm. And if they do...
But it's late notice. It's hard to get that. You're not going to get like players that are playing well, players that are valued by other clubs at this stage of the window, because this is the time where clubs are like, we've got to keep our best players. Yeah. So unless you're paying astronomical prices, it's not a buying market. So you've basically got to gamble on loans that may or may not work or go into other markets, but it's a very risky position, I think, that Sheffield United have put themselves in.
And Justin, I mean, talking about their midfield, we don't know who's going to leave still. I mean, if Gus Hamer stays with, Arblaster's going to stay, Callum O'Hare's in the mix as well. That's an exceptional championship midfield, isn't it?
It really is, and I think the big thing there is I think Gus Hamer is he's very much a Chris Wilder player. He's robust. He's got a technical quality as well. But I think the thing that worries me most about Sheffield United is the massive culture change within the dressing room. You've gone from old heads like John Egan, Ollie Norwood, John Fleck, a lot more players. West Foderingham, they've been there for a while, and then you're sort of replacing them with new ones. Very good signings, but the dressing room's got to adapt as well, and that will take time. And you're there with a manager there who's under pressure. He's under pressure. He might not feel like that's the case within Sheffield United, or within the fan base, but from outside there's a lot of pressure. And again, there's a potential new ownership as well. New owners come in, see results not doing well, they're going to want to change a manager. So I think there's a lot of pressure points there for Sheffield United. Don't necessarily convince me, despite having a very good squad, despite having a lot of talent. There's just certain things, certain intangibles that are just pulling me back at the moment.
So are you two out of the playoffs for Sheffield United right
I
now?
think so, yeah.
You two?
Yeah. No, I've got parachute power and club size getting them in there.
I'm with you there, Ben. Right, we're coming to a club now because, Gab, I was reading your predictions in the Championship.
Yeah.
I opened
Popcorn out,
this link
everyone.
and I thought, is he made a typo? Is there an error here? Because for some reason, next to the first and the number one, you'd written Sunderland.
Yeah.
Take it away.
I understand why it seems like a really left field shout, and it seems like something you might say for a bit of clickbait. I promise you, this is a genuine opinion. I think Sunderland are about to hit a massive spike in their development. So they've had a very youth-dominated recruitment policy over the last 2 or 3 years, and actually it's got to the stage now some of these players who have got incredible potential for Premier League, top, any sort of level. Now only 3 of the 27 are actually teenagers, so these are all players that are kind of coming towards their peak years. And I think Anthony Patterson in goal, Trey Hume at right back, Dan Ballard at centre back, Dan Neil and Joe Bellingham in midfield, and then Patrick Roberts and Jack Clark out wide. I think any of them could be some of the best players.
I'm getting amped up listening to this.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Red and White Army.
Absolutely. So I think if they sign the right striker, then I think the potential they've got is absolutely off the scale, personally.
I think there's a lot of ifs. The potential is clearly there. Yeah. Justin, you come in on this because they've also got a new manager who we know very little about, especially in English football.
Yeah, there are a lot of ifs or something. Maybe Gab's gone a year too soon with his prediction, but I think it's one you can get behind, because a lot of what Gab is saying is bang on. They are, the way they've recruited the youngsters that they've got. There's such a supreme amount of talent there, and I think if Jack Clark can stay, that's if he stays fit. I mean, Sunderland with Jack Clark were a top half side. Sunderland without Jack Clark or a bottom half side. Simple as that. He's the star. He's a star man. So if he stays around, stays fit, there's a push up to the top half of the table. There's just the uncertainties with. I look at the top of the club, Speakman. I'm not as big a fan as maybe Gab is of him, mainly because the time it takes to replace their managers. It took a while to replace Tony Mowbray, Mick Beale, and then it took a long time to replace Mick Beale as well with Regis Labrie. So. Yeah,
it's unlikely to have been first choice. I just get that
feeling. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It seems like there was so many more candidates ahead of him, and again, that number 9 position needs to be filled.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't filled last summer. I thought that was a huge error from the club. And again, they are adding experience, which is a positive, but that number 9 position detrimental.
Ben, are you pro Sunderland, anti Sunderland, somewhere in the middle?
Oh, I'm completely down the middle on everything. But I'm like, fair play, because we do these predictions, just to come off Sunderland for a second. We do these predictions every year. It's so easy to just go, right, where are all the Parachute teams? We'll stick all of them in the top 6. All the League One teams, we'll stick all of them down the bottom. And it's fun sometimes to try and call an outlier that, where was Sunderland last year? Like 15th or 16th or something. It's fun sometimes to go, do you know what? I put Watford 6th last year for the same reason. You never know. Fair wind, and it could be like that. I don't see them finishing first, Gab, but I love the idea of this incremental, bringing in all the young players and all the European players could snap and pay off, dare I say, in a very similar way to Daniel Farke's season 1 at Norwich, to Daniel Farke's season 2 at Norwich. Whoosh.
Well,
boom.
bear in mind as well, much of this group actually reached the playoffs under Tony Mowbray in 22-23, and that was when they were 2 years further back in their
It's happened
development.
too early, didn't it? It would almost have been more helpful if they'd have gone halfway in between.
So now it's the right time.
Maybe.
I think Sunderland are going to be in the Premier League in, I'd say, 3 seasons, because it feels that way.
Definitely.
And would you agree that they're on their way there?
Yeah.
Do you think this
I
year
think
is
it's
maybe
just a
too
little
soon?
bit too early
Maybe
still,
too
yeah,
soon.
definitely. But the talent is obviously there, and they keep recruiting in the way they have been doing. Then I can see them doing it in about, say, 3 or 4 years, yeah. But yeah, just far too early this season for me. But interesting shout.
The thing is, though, it's not teenagers anymore, and
No.
they've got players like Patterson and Ballard have now got lots of EFL experience now. Not to mention Luke O'Nien, who's an absolute mentality monster. They brought in Alan Brown as well from Preston, who's going to bring a bit of grit. I'm tripping over my words now. I'm so excited. Alan Brown, he's going to bring a bit of grit and drive to that midfield and a bit of experience as well.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be a massive influence as well. And yeah, I take the point on board about Labrie, but I actually think if the manager can bring a decent level of coaching and be a steady hand, I just think this squad is going to shoot up in value, given that they're at an age profile now where they're very close to hitting their peak.
I think at some point it will happen though.
Yeah.
It's just when and when. Yeah.
I'm excited to see Sunderland this season. And Gab, you can always just copy and paste that article and do it again next year. We've actually talked about this club a fair bit already. Norwich City, they had a very, very strange season last season. Ben finished in the playoffs, but never felt like they were truly behind David Wagner. He was sacked almost immediately. They were hammered by Leeds, barely put up a fight in that one. Now they've got Hannes Hofthorpe in through the door. It feels like maybe a bit of optimism's returning to Carrow Road.
It was confusing, wasn't it? I have never seen a manager from that game against Blackburn at the start of November who I thought, he is done. The fans aren't having him. The team stink. You know, they get hammered at home on Sky TV. This is over. And then months and months later, he's finished 6th and he's in the playoffs. And Norwich fans that I speak to were, you know, like, oh, well, we got in the playoffs, but I'd still like to change the manager at the end of the season. You know, okay, what's going on here? So it's going to be a transition season, isn't it, under Thorup, however we're pronouncing it. I'm very interested to see of Sarah, Nunes, Rowe, Sargent, and it's great that they've got the assets. And remember, you talked about Parker tax earlier. There's Norwich tax. They sell brilliantly and get great fees. I would imagine 1 or 2 of that bunch will go, and then we'll see. So I've got your Coventry season last season for Norwich, the transition bumper season, but. You know Norwich, whenever you think they're, you know, very cockroachy Norwich, aren't they? I say that in the most loving way possible. Whenever you think they're beaten, out of absolutely nowhere, they appear at the top of the championship, don't they? So
that can be taken out of context. That one.
Mate, everything I say about Norwich gets taken out of context. So what am I going to do, eh?
What I will say about Norwich is you mentioned the quadruple there. Those 4 players, they're all spectacular championship attacking players. Josh Sargent, 16 goals in 28 games. Adam, let's go to you. Do you think he's the best striker in the championship when he's fit?
I think it's definitely up there.
Is he good enough to get a move, like Ben says, to the Premier League? Because I don't know if he. I don't know
say-
if the team would have.
I'd say not
still
quite.
Got some money burning a hole in their pocket
Yeah.
after not signing Archie Gray, haven't they?
I'd say not quite yet for him, in my opinion. But the thing is, you never know with him. He's done so well for Norwich so far. But yeah, I think there's better strikers for me, definitely.
Okay. And you excited, as I am, about this attacking Norwich team, at least, if they stay together?
Well, I think reading up about Thorup is he wants to play through the thirds. He wants to play on the front foot, which is a positive. I think the only thing that makes me nervous is a Grant Hanley and Shane Duffy playing out from the back sort of scenario. That's kind of scary. But
they have signed Cordoba, who I think
yes,
is going to make a difference.
yeah, exactly. There's potentially a player there, but you know the likes of Gab Sutton can win games on his own. You know, he carried Norwich while Sargent was injured. Then you got Johnny Rowe again. I think they did feel his injury towards the end of
I think
last season.
Sargent Justin was even more extreme than Clark at Sunderland for points for with him or win percentage, however you want to phrase it. And without him, it was ridiculous. They lost without him and won with him, basically.
Yeah, and his minutes per goal ratio was outstanding. I mean, you'd be injured for a lot of the season. It's going to be the case, but He's a clinical forward, Josh Sargent. I mean, you mix that with a bit of Mirko talent in Boye Sainz as well, and then Johnny Rowe. They are bringing with quality. It's just who stays. It's just who stays. But I'm quite positive about Ben Napper, the technical director, who's replaced Stuart Webber. They move quick on Thorup, and seemingly have a bit more of an idea.
I think there's a good feeling around Norwich at the moment that they feel like they've got a vision to get behind, and I think they've had quite an exhausting, mentally draining sort of 3 years where finished bottom of the Premier League and then looked a little bit disjointed for a couple of seasons, and even managing to get into the playoffs under David Wagner, fans weren't entirely happy, whereas now I think they could conceivably finish 10th, but if they're building towards a certain style of play and they're developing some players from an academy that's doing really well at the moment, then actually I think a lot of their fans are going to be happy. So I think there's a bit of optimism about Carrow Road. How much of that is placed straight into this season? I would maybe say it's more about the long-term picture that fans are feeling really positive about.
I'm sorry for grouping two teams together here as we move on, but these two teams were very likely to get relegated in the middle of last season. Certain to get relegated. Appointed brilliant managers, and now looking up the table, maybe even to the playoffs. And I'm, of course, talking about Sheffield Wednesday and QPR. Ben, top 6 hopes a little bit too far for either of these, or top half certainly?
I mean, wasn't it just strange? Because the amount of times we see at the bottom of the Championship, you're not doing great, you sack the manager, nothing changes. The points completely flat line. And we had Roll incredible. I think 10th in his time. I think if you took just the portion he was there. Same for Cifuentes. Arguably, Schumacher bounced Stoke and Harris massively bounced Millwall. It was just very odd high tide season. And they were fantastic, both of them. Someone messaged me the other day saying both of them in the top 10. And I'm like, be careful, don't expect it all to just, shoot straight up the table now, even though I do not blame Wednesday or Rangers fans for being optimistic. Play the long game, move into, it could be 12th, 10th, but and see where it goes. I don't have either of them in my top 6, I have to say.
I think Wednesday do get top 6. Because I think Danny Röhl is the highest potential manager in the Championship. And you know me, I'm judging a lot of things on potential. But I think that if you look at it, yes, top 10 form from when Danny Röhl first took charge, but he actually lost 5 of his first 6 games, but the performance levels massively improved. And from that point onwards, which is just over half the season, I think 27 games of last season, it was top 6 form. It was playoff form for Sheffield Wednesday, which I just think is so impressive. And bearing in mind now that he signed a 3-year deal, so presumably he's had certain reassurances that things are going to operate his way.
Nice big buyout clause in there, Gab.
Absolutely, yeah. But also he's been able to recruit some of his own players. He's had a full pre-season to get his ideas across in a more extended format. Why not look at Sheffield Wednesday as a top 6 proposition?
And Mr. Chansiri's nice and quiet, which is always a good
Hopefully
thing when it comes to Sheffield Wednesday.
They've made an awful lot of signings Wednesday this summer. I know he signed the new contract, but I can't help feel that if Danny Röhl has Wednesday in the top 6 in November and a Premier League team, which they always do, sat their manager near the bottom, he's surely number 1 on the list.
But then he could have gone in the summer though.
Yeah.
He could have, but
I mean, a Premier League club guaranteed to take a risk on a manager who's up and coming and as intelligent as Danny Röhl is. I mean, we saw him over the Euros speak so elegantly.
Cifuentes, though, is in the same boat, I think.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, there was links with Burnley, and probably would have been a bit hotter on Burnley if they'd have gone for Cifuentes, because Cifuentes had to compromise a lot of his values to get QPR pushing higher up the table. So what can QPR do? Embracing those values that he wants to bring to his squad and his team. So, yeah, there's a lot to be excited about Wednesday in QPR. But like Ben said, I think the optimism or the excitement is probably carrying a lot of people's enthusiasm rather than just maybe reining it back and just building rather than sort of jumping.
Adam, I'll put you on the spot here and ask you: do you think if we're sat here this time next year that Danny Röhl is Sheffield Wednesday manager and Cifuentes is QPR manager?
I think neither will be, in my opinion, because I think Danny Röhl...
Positive,
positive, yeah. No, but
they're both being
getting sacked. Yeah. Not getting sacked. Yeah. I think Danny Röhl definitely. I think he will do well this season. At the start of the season with Wednesday, anyway. I think he'll pick up where he left off last season, and I think it's inevitable that a Premier League club will come out. Even a Bundesliga club or someone like that could come in for him. take him off Wednesday's hands, definitely.
And Cifuentes, same sort of thing.
Same situation, yeah. Not as likely as well for me to do well this season, definitely. But say if they start well again, then a Prem club could come in and take him. So
Right, from the top to the bottom of the table and the relegation candidates. Let's start with Wayne Rooney at Plymouth. Very interesting appointment, of course, after his failed spell at Birmingham. Gab, obviously a Birmingham fan. Let's get your opinion on Rooney in terms of what he did to Birmingham, what he can do to Plymouth. Hopefully not too negative. Not just take them down to League One.
I think this is a big job for Wayne Rooney. I think he showed some promise at Derby, as Justin might allude to, but I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how he does at Plymouth Argyle, especially with basically that they lost in January Luke Cundle and Finn Azaz in midfield, who are their two best players. I don't think they replaced him in January, and I'm not sure they replaced him necessarily this summer either. And then you add to that the uncertainty still over the futures of Morgan Whittaker and Michael Cooper, and I almost think in one way it's great that they're still there, but in another way it's almost like you'd want to have some sort of resolution either way. So I think that could be a problem. So I think he's got a lot to address, and I think it's going to be a difficult gig for him.
Plymouth seems like a tricky club to be at this moment in time, given the squad and what's happening, but maybe we should be giving Rooney a bit of credit for jumping into this job again.
Yeah, well, I think we should. I mean, I'm a bit of a Rooney sceptic, given his time at Derby. A lot of the coaching was done by Liam Rossini. Don't get me wrong, he was a big leader, not only within the club, but within the city as well, during their circumstances. But I just think the job at Birmingham, he's not really taking accountability for it, does diminish his... I wouldn't say diminish his reputation, but just the drive and the want to have him manage a club, it drops a little bit. And then I think him taking the Plymouth.
Is that not just a bit of like brand management though?
Well, yeah,
that maybe in 10 years' time he will.
Yeah, he probably will when he releases another biography. But it's just one of those scenarios where things were bad and you're just pointing the fingers at players' fitness. It's just one of those where he's firefighting himself a little bit. But I just think there is something there. I think him going to Plymouth might release it. I just don't know whether Plymouth are good enough to stay up with the players they've got.
That's the other thing, because I remember when he was at Derby, and you can expand on this maybe, Justin. Rooney was trying to play out from the back with a high line with Curtis Davis and Phil Jagielka, who are 37 and 40.
We were a bit cash strapped.
And it was just I think Wayne Rooney... Sometimes when you get high-profile managers, they're often focused on how can I elevate my brand in order to look good to bigger clubs.
Vincent Company.
Yeah, well, exactly. And actually, sometimes that approach isn't necessarily the thing that the club the job right in front of you needs, and that's a little bit of a concern that I have with Wayne Rooney going into what's likely to be a championship dogfight.
It feels like Plymouth would have been amongst the relegation candidates here anyway, Ben.
Yeah.
They had Morgan Whittaker last season. He was phenomenal. For now, it looks like he's staying. Obviously, again, a month to go in the transfer window. He's going to need to produce a similar season, and he did tail off a bit towards the end of last season.
Yeah, the kind of Manuel Benson, Iron Robin, the comparison of it. Always did it against Ipswich, come in and smash it in the top corner. It's a bit frustrating, isn't it? Because Plymouth, you would have identified as one of the best run clubs in the whole EFL, coming through under Simon Hallett and Ryan Lowe, and to beat that Ipswich team to win League One was sensational. I think there was a bit of trading off that at the start of last season. I got a bit of momentum. Totally agree with you about Mike Cooper as well. I think be very helpful for them if he's either sold for loads of money or in goal for the entire season. You can tell me which one's more likely, but this is it for Rooney, isn't it? Is there another job if he's all my YouTube comments telling me he's sacked in October? That's it if he.
It is quite a risky move for him, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. For me, I got it down as my first manager sack this season. So, but yeah,
it's an interesting one. Home park's going to be crucial again.
Yeah,
with all of these teams we're going to talk about at the bottom, home form is so important. Plymouth were decent at home last season, but let's move on to a team I really worry about this season in Blackburn Rovers. Adam, do you want to jump in on Blackburn? Because Sam Gallagher's just left to join
definitely.
Stoke. Sammy Schmodix looks almost certain to leave.
Yeah.
There's a court case on the horizon. There's a back line which is a combined danger of about 142.
I mean, when there's so much unrest about a club it normally doesn't end well for him. So they could be in the bottom 3 this season, definitely. They've lost the front 2 as well. They are going to lose the front 2 with Schmodek's leaving as well. That'll be massive for him. I think Schmodek's goals kept them up last season, obviously. And if they lose that, then you can't really see where they'll get the goals from this season. So.
It was a one-man band almost.
Definitely,
With Schmodek's, and it's almost certain he's going to leave it seems at this point. Any shoots of positivity for Rovers, Ben?
Well, the shoots of positivity are that John Eustace, as a manager, is pragmatic and can stop teams losing. In respects of if you need to get draws and get away from the bottom, it's not going to be 50 points to survive again, surely, like it was last season. But the trend is.
Or do you actually, just on that though, Ben, do you think that the fact that it's going to be a lower points tally at the top means that the bottom teams are actually going to have more opportunities to take points from the top teams this year?
Without being facetious, depends on the middle, doesn't it? Because that's where that's what completely dropped out at the end of last season, didn't it? But I could be either, but unlikely to be that high a points total. Mm-hmm. But I always say that 4 things relegate clubs: chaos, owners, bad luck, and size, with a big circle around owners, which would be my big worry for Blackburn this season.
I mean, the trend with Blackburn over the years has been not selling players at the wrong times. Ben Burns leaving on a free, Adam Armstrong. I know he went for a bigger fee.
Rothwell.
Yeah, Rothwell. It's just countless. Darrell Lenihan. It's just countless examples of terrible decision making at the top, very, very top. And you'd argue that if they'd have sold those players at the right time, reinvest that money, they'd be in a completely different position, which is a really frustrating one, I imagine, for Blackburn fans.
Even when they've sold Adam Morton at the right time and probably Schmodek's now at the right time, that money's just being used to keep the lights on.
Exactly. And it's a sad scenario, but I think they've got the right manager in place. Other clubs don't, who have ownership problems. Other clubs don't, but I think John Eustace is probably the right man to guide a football club in peril away from a relegation dogfight or in a relegation dogfight.
The worry I have for Blackburn Rovers is I actually think their first 11 is decent or competitive, but I think that in terms of depth, they're going to be hugely reliant on their youth academy. And while the academy is in a decent place, I think you're going to be asking too much of players that we're not sure are going to be ready for championship level. So
we did say this about Derby a few years ago, and these players came up and were extremely good. Louis Sibley, Aaron Cashin, Liam Thompson, they all stepped up. So it does, when you've got this world against you mentality, it can work, and I guess why I think John Eustace is the right man. He did it at Birmingham.
Blackburn do have that 16-year-old striker as well, who I've forgotten his name, but a lot of us expect
Igor.
That's the one. I mean, if he breaks into the first team this season, it could be very, very exciting. Do we all think Blackburn are going down?
Yes.
They're in the conversation. I haven't done my 1 to 24s yet. I'm not as quick as Gab, honestly.
Not for me, no. Just surviving.
Interesting. Okay.
Just surviving as well. Yeah.
Okay, I've got them finishing bottom because
bottom.
Yeah. I mean,
ball shot.
Clubs in chaos don't do well, and I
true.
really worry for Blackburn. Justin, let's let you take the lead on. You don't have to grimace. We're going to talk about Derby.
I do. Yeah.
Paul Warne in charge. Relegation specialist at this level.
That's
I really like Paul Warne. Derby is going to be a tough season from the outset, isn't it?
No, it is. It is. I mean, it's good to like someone as a person, but if they're crap at their job, then it's. I mean, at Championship level, I'll throw that one out. League One Guardiola. That's leave it there. There's a lot to like about Paul Warne, but unfortunately, in the Championship, he's just not up to the standard.
Can you not put that down to size and budget at Rotherham, or at least give him some credit in that regard?
You can give him some credit, but we've seen clubs do more with less. Luton have risen, Coventry have risen. Clubs can do it. I just don't think Paul Warne's got the tactical foresight to change things. I've seen it in pre-season this summer where he's opted for a 3-4-3, and he's finally admitted 2 weeks before the season that it's not working out for him. You don't use he's too honest. He doesn't, like Gab was saying off air, he doesn't give himself enough belief either. And if he's not giving himself enough belief, how can we as supporters and players believe in him as well?
I think he's one of his main strengths as a person is his vulnerability. And when he was at Rotherham United, he had this technique of getting people to write on the board, who are they doing this for, and get people to connect with a way that I've never seen any other manager do that. And I think that's a massive strength of Warne's. I also think that it's a strength that translates well to maybe a smaller family club, if you like. And I think at a club like Derby County, I don't know that his mentality suits that much, though I have to give him credit for last season. I often find myself feeling like I wish he believed in himself a little bit more. And that's where I'd have a little bit of apprehension about how that's going to work out at Championship level.
I find myself with Warren thinking, why did he go to Derby? He went to Derby to get them into the Championship and have a much better chance at staying up, I think, than Rotherham would. Yeah. So surely this is, time for him to really push on and prove the doubters wrong.
Well, and that's what I'd put to you, Justin. Do you not think there's something in size, stature, expectation at Derby that, and also they've been in this league for so many years as well, that might help him a little bit? I totally agree with you, because he's like the most likeable manager you can get. But then sometimes really good managers are not very likeable people, are they? But so you can spin that both ways. But what would be your response to that? That maybe he could rise to Derby's level?
I've not seen it yet. That's the thing. I think although the points-wise it was quite tight in League One with the top two race, I don't think it should have been as tight as it was. I think Derby should have been home and home.
92 is 92 though. That's
true.
That's the 2 points per game, isn't it?
But again, just with the quality of players that we've had throughout the season, and again, you go to that first 5-6 games of the season, Derby were a disaster last year. They were a disaster. And then things did improve because he changed to a 4-2-3-1. This is what I mean about tactical foresight. I think that outruns his capability to do the intangibles. But you are right. He could rise to it. He could rise to the club, and Derby's form and stature could bring it up. But I don't think that's the case, because I don't think there's an ego associated with the club anymore, and I think that does go a long way.
The other thing I would say about Derby is they brought in players that helped them get out of League One within 2 years, and that certainly served that objective. But I think there's lots of players there in that squad that have probably served their primary purpose, and I think that's going to make this stabilisation process at the Championship a little bit difficult.
That's a great point. You need those players, but you can't have an entire team of them, can you?
Would you agree with that assessment of the squad in terms of it? If Paul Warren wasn't the manager, or if he leaves, do you think this squad is good enough to stay up?
I think it's got a better chance of staying up. I still think there's 3 or 4 players short. I think there's quality there. There's a lot of hard-working players there. I think would be the best things. It's lacking technical quality, which is frustrating. But that's the market Derby are batting in at the moment. But I think there's certainly a lot of quality and experience, like Gab said. I mean, Sheffield United managed to go up levels with a group of League One players, with Chris Wilder in charge. But Chris Wilder had that tactical nous to do something different. I don't think Paul Warren has that, which again, I'll just bring it back to my main point, about him not being tactically ahead enough of the chasing pack.
Talking of a man who I think is quite tactically astute, is the favourites to get relegated, Oxford United. They won the playoffs, not a massive points total in League One last year.
Not at all, no.
The performance they put in against Bolton, in the playoff final at Wembley was absolutely incredible, wasn't it? So in terms of survival hopes, what were we thinking for them?
I've put them to go down for me, but only just, I think. They have made some decent signings so far in the summer. But then when you see a team come up that's finished on so little points, it's hard to see them doing well in the Championship, definitely. When there's powerhouses like the teams that come down from the Premier League and the parachute payments, and you just can't see them staying up, but you never know. And
Josh Murphy, that's the big
that's
one.
True,
isn't it? 2
definitely,
in the playoff final,
and they've lost him, So
I think we were all a bit surprised when he decided to move to Portsmouth. But that's
definitely.
Football, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Ben, in terms of Oxford, any chance for you of going for it?
It's going to be really, really hard, isn't it? And I always try and argue against the myth of the team coming from the middle of the table towards the end of the season, going on a run, and I know Oxford were kind of up there when Liam Manning had them as well. But you know what I'm saying? New manager in, and we were talking about teams doing things too soon. There's a bit of a sense. I mean, you never get promoted too soon, but 5th place, 77 points, and Sheffield Wednesday got 96 the season before to get that's the 2 promotion levels. And I mean, Gab will know from League One better than me about Cameron Brannigan and Mark Harris.
Yeah, I
think
they
step up.
I think Cameron Brannigan definitely can. I think he's a Championship player, and I think I'm surprised he's not made the move before. I think he's come close once or twice, but I think it's a very valid point that you've raised, Ben. For me, when Des Buckingham first came in, the first 4 months of his form, they're actually bottom half in the form table now. you can very much mitigate that by the fact they had lots of injuries, especially out wide, and that would have made things difficult to deliver for Des Buckingham to deliver the absolute optimum version of what he wanted. But you could also argue he took 4 months to get to grips with League One before the last couple of months of the season went on. They went on this really good run. So for the Championship, which is a very big jump and a different kettle of fish, I'm a little bit apprehensive about whether you want to, as a newly promoted club, when it gets difficult, you want to be able to look at what you've done under that manager over a whole season. Whereas for Oxford, it's just the last couple of months, and that's not as much of a reassurance, I guess.
I don't know if I've fallen for the romance of it all, of obviously him being an Oxford lad, a boyhood fan, coming back there, getting them into the Championship. Have I fallen too much in love with the Oxford story? Sorry,
I don't think so. I think looking at this squad, there's a strong spine there. The likes of Elliot Moore, Cameron Brannigan. I like the idea of Mark Harris stepping up into the Championship because he has that experience before. Been a squad player at Cardiff, wasn't prolific, but he found his scoring form last season. In League One, and then they've added the likes of Il Mazzuni,
Jack Curry from Wimbledon.
Yeah, Jack Curry, Peter Chioso, who I'm quite a big fan of as well, and Louis Sibley, who I know a lot about. His career's stalled a little bit, and he needs a refresh. And I think if you get a good refresh out of him, there's potential of him realising the potential he had a couple of years ago. So I think they've recruited smartly, and they've got a strong spine, and they've got a manager who I feel is tactically, got the nuance to try and compete. So I'm not as. I think there are clubs in worse positions.
They've got to get moving, Justin. They've got to be over a point per game at October, November, and give themselves something to kind of push off. Damning with faint praise, I know, but we're all looking at a good season for Oxford, above the bottom three, right?
Absolutely. Are there any other sides we're worried about down there in that kind of relegation threatened zone? Maybe not. You've got them going down, but any sides that you're concerned about?
Watford.
Yep.
I think Watford are in a very chaotic position as a club. Normally, you like to go and look at a squad and think, yes, you can tick off that core of 5 or 6 reliable players. I don't really see that with Watford. Probably their biggest hope this season is Georgie Chakvetadze, who had a brilliant Euros with Georgia. But I sort of feel, even Chakvetadze only started 14 league games last season, and he's supposed to be their biggest hope, if you like. So
is Esprilla still there, Gab?
Esprilla's gone to Rennes.
He's gone.
Very much.
Yeah.
He's been pictured in the car park.
Yeah, so in terms of absolute big hitters, they've all kind of, Wesley Hoop might go as well. So I think the squad's in a bit of a perilous situation. They've been lower mid-table the last couple of seasons. A lot of chaos in terms of an ownership point of view. I'm worried about Watford.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And again, the formula Ben put to us earlier about clubs being in, I wouldn't say dire straits with their owners, but they owners completely disinterested. There's a lot of Watford fans frustrated at the lack of involvement, but a lot of noise coming out of the likes of Udinese and other clubs that they own.
And Justin, look at Norwich as well. Excuse me, who you could argue they've both squandered the 2 years of parachute payments, but Norwich are doing a reset. They've got assets. Yeah. It feels a lot less.
Well, the other thing is Norwich have got a sporting director in Ben Napper, whereas Watford's sporting director is also sporting director at Udinese. Now, how's that going to work from a commuting perspective?
We all know how that's going to work.
How's he going to get from one guy? That's a bit of a chaotic situation. So you think of a sporting director having a day-to-day presence at the club, and I think if your mind's also on another club, I think that's going to have an operational impact as well.
I think it's quite telling that we're having a conversation about relegation and we've not talked about the League One champions, Portsmouth. Are we all fairly confident here, Adam, that they're going to do all right?
I think they'll do well, but it's worth putting them into the conversation about Championship relegation because they're a new team to the Championship. Not sure how John Mousinho will cope in the Championship, but I think he's definitely done well since he's come into Portsmouth 1,000%, but they have to be in the conversation for me, yeah, definitely.
Ben, are you?
Yeah, I would agree with 99% of that. John Mousinho looks like he's going to be, we'll have it when we hear a very articulate, nicely spoken ex-football player. We're like, oh wow, he's going to be an incredible manager, and it's proven to be so in the first season. But I would throw to you boys on the quality of the squad and the need for a bit more beef, and some really bad news for Colby Bishop the other day as well.
Yeah, that's not ideal. I think for me, what I see with Portsmouth is every time they've got this real bounce back ability, which I really like about them as a newly promoted club, because last season they had setbacks both in terms of injury. So when Bishop was absent, they had a striker called Cassini Yengi who actually played a prominent role when they beat Bolton, who are another automatic promotion contender. So they lost Regan Poole, who was this incredible leader at the back, and players like Sean Raggett stepped up, and Connor Shaughnessy, who wasn't expecting to play such a prominent role, stepped up. And I think what John Massinio, their manager, is really good. I think he's a very good modern leader, and I think he's very good at reframing challenges as opportunities. A little bit the opposite of what we've spoken about with Paul Warne, you might say. And I think that's what I'm really excited about with Massinio. And again, that bounce back ability point, the case with injuries, but also whenever they did have that big home defeat, like losing 4-0 at home to Blackpool and losing 3-0 at home to Leyton Orient, they always ground out an ugly away win to 0 after that. And that, to me, shows they're very good at nipping those bad results in the bud. They're going to have more of those bad results in the Championship, so they're going to need to respond to those and tick over a sort of a steady flow of points, which I think they've got it in them to do.
You can see them, Gab, beating a parachute team on a midweek game at Fratton Park. That they could really make that work for them.
Well, it's just feeding into that a little bit. It's the Plymouth factor, isn't it? It's a long distance to get to. I know it's a weird thing to say, but distance does play a part, especially on a Tuesday night. Getting down to Fratton Park, it's windy.
Definitely in League One, it plays a part. Less so in the Championship, but I take your point.
But then you've got a stadium there, a bit like Luton. In Kenilworth Road, where the fans are on top of you, it's going to play a role, and it's going to help you get results when things are really ugly. So I think that will certainly play a part. But I think the thing that would diminish my expectation on Portsmouth is the loss of Colby Bishop, and hopefully he recovers quickly, because losing a 20-goal striker is a big blow. So, and again, Alex Robertson and Abu Kamara, big loan players last season, yet to be replaced. And I think again, Portsmouth are
Norwich fans want Kamara in their team.
Exactly. It was that good last season for Portsmouth. So that the pace of their transfers so far have been a little bit slow for me.
Fair, yeah.
I'm concerned about Preston. I don't want anyone wants to join me being concerned about Preston, or if I'm on my own here. I think the fact that Alan Brown turned down a record contract and left after all those years is concerning.
A record contract? Was he going to be a singer?
Maybe.
He's getting promoted with Sunderland, isn't he? So
yeah, I was winning the league with Sunderland, of course he is. I also think Gab, you did some research into their stats in terms of their XG. They overperformed it massively last season. I think the quality of the mid-table in the Championship are all looking to improve this season, potentially all go above Preston.
Well, and we've already mentioned the massive hole in quality at the end of the season in the mid-table, haven't we?
And also, Preston, what was the start of last season for them? 6 wins out of 7?
Yeah.
5 wins out of 6? They were top of the league, and if you take that out of it, they end up probably finishing 18th to 19th anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I think they won 6 of their first 7 quite unconvincingly. They were sort of narrow wins that you just managed to grab. And then after that, it was bottom 6 form. And so they finished 10th, but they actually finished closer to 18th in points last season than to the top 6. So it was a slightly, dare I say, false position. You might have
lost their last
last 5 games.
Last 5 games as well, yeah. I'm feeling negative.
Yeah, I agree.
I will probably book the trend there a little bit. I'm a little bit more positive about Preston. Don't get me wrong, I don't see them making that step up to the playoffs that they've been flirting with for a while. But I think they've got a player in Mods Fraka Jensen who struggled to adapt to the Championship last season. So maybe he's
a lively customer, isn't he?
He is, but there's an attacking quality there that he can bring to a side if he finds his feet. Similarly with Osmovic as well. There's a player there who was largely hit and miss. Largely miss, but again, if there's a player there who can settle, there's a big thing. And Stefan Thordarson, I think, is a great signing as well, because he adds an energy and an attacking spark into that midfield that Alan Brown's vacating. So there's a potential replacement there. And defensively, I think they're fine. I think they're fine to be away, far away from the relegation battle just with their defence alone. And you add a little bit more spark into their attack, I think they can push into the top half.
Top half, wow. Ryan Lowe. Adam, let's go to you with Ryan Lowe. Obviously, he made the move from Plymouth. Has it paid off really for him?
Not as he hoped, I don't think. Definitely not. But I do sort of rate Ryan Lowe as a manager. And I think I can see him pushing on as well, in my opinion, to be honest. And not in the conversation for me in terms of relegation. Ryan Lowe is still sort of young as a manager. learning his trade still, and that could click at some point.
And Ben, your penneth on.
I think we say it's the year 2050, and Preston have just finished between 9th and 13th in the Premier League. The Premier League?
Premier League.
Wow.
They win.
Championship. There we
They've
go.
made
It's a
it.
Sloydian frick for you, everybody. For the 35th consecutive season, they just always finish in the middle, don't they?
I just can't say it. I
I think
would be
they've
staggered if they're
Simon, I
above
think they've
14.
actually gone like 12th, 10th. Or 13th.
It's progression. It's progression.
They've
There we
actually
go.
moved up the table in the last 3 seasons. But I totally accept the point. Ipswich did it in last season, possibly under Mick McCarthy. They won the first 5 games with an XG of about 0.1 for the entire 5 games. And we're all kind of sitting there going, it's lovely to be top of the table, but we all know what's coming. And yeah, it's certainly the case for Preston last season. But I've got them in the middle where they always are.
Okay. Are there any other mid-table teams we've not mentioned so far that anyone wants to make?
Is anyone not a little worried about Swansea and the general trend with the American ownership there and the squandering of the parachute payments and having Dan James and Joe Rodon and Ollie McBurney and getting loads of money and having Steve Cooper and Graham Potter and everyone kind of going, and we're moving
Been the same since
down the
2018
table?
now, hasn't it? Nothing's changed with Swansea.
Agreed. Yeah.
I like Luke Williams, who they've got as a coach. I do share Ben's concerns about them from an ownership point of view, but they have got Matt Grimes, who I think can be one of the best playmakers in the league.
He's going to go to Preston and still be in the Championship in 2050. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if they keep Matt Grimes, then I think they've got a good chance of staying in that mid-table spot, because they do like Luke Williams. I think they're going to be a bit short on depth this year. And have to lean on youth, but I think Grimes is the big one for me.
Yeah, I think they made a couple of smart additions as well. I think Giancarlo Franco coming from Portugal is quite a smart signing, because he's again robust midfielder. The lightweight team needs that sort of player. Jan Potnik as well, I think is a clever signing from Bordeaux. Only because I sign him a lot on Football Manager, but he's a big unit, plays his back to goal, which again I think is a sort of player that Swansea need.
And in terms of Cardiff, Errol Bullitt in charge there. They've got Chris Willock, haven't they, from QPR on a free. It's a decent pickup, it seems. Are they just going to be in the middle somewhere like Swansea?
It's the Chris Wilder conversation. If you get Chris Willock 21-22 under Mark Warburton, bosh, happy days. If you get the Chris Willock of the last 18 months, then I've got Cardiff regressing slightly after an initial bump under Errol Ballou and getting out of embargo and everything. I'm not seeing Mr. Tan spending a lot of money there, and I think they're going to regress slightly.
Heavy reliant on set pieces as well. They're the highest scorers from set pieces last season. You're putting a lot of pressure on your set plays to carry on. It usually makes up for a lack of quality, which they had, despite having Josh Bowler, Carlin Grant, Callum Robinson. None of them seem to get going or click throughout the season. So you're asking someone like Chris Willock, who's been out of form for the best part of 18 months, 2 years, doing that is going to be a difficult thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's partly an investment thing, but it's also a structural thing. I don't necessarily trust Cardiff City so much as a structural entity. So I agree. I think they might drop off, and I think they might put a bit too much pressure on the defence again that we saw last season.
Right, so we've analysed pretty much every side in the division, and it's time for our quickfire championship predictions. I believe this is coming out next week, Ben. So your prediction, your 1 to 24 predictions.
Holding me to it then.
You can get them out here, and we won't ruin them. So we're going to go through a number of categories. Give me your answer and a quick reason why. That would be great. So first of all, start at the top. League winners. Gab, boys, go around this way.
Sunderland.
Leeds.
I'll go Leeds as well. I'll join you.
Luton.
Leeds.
Okay, all Leeds. I think we've already explained why.
Not all Leeds.
You said something. You said Sunderland. Who do we think's going up with them? Your automatic promotion and then your playoff winner as well.
Leeds.
Coventry and Luton.
I'll give you that. 10 later. Cheers, mate.
I need to give you my playoff
Yes.
playoff winner. I'll go with Luton as well.
Okay. I've got Luton in second and Cov winning the playoffs.
Went Leeds in second and Cov in the playoffs again.
You can all come back.
I'm going to get invited back. All parachutes plus Coventry is my pool, and I won't say no more.
And who in second?
Any one of the parachute teams. Coventry are the only ones I think who could break that glass ceiling. I don't see Middlesbrough doing it.
Interesting. Relegation trio. Who do we think's going down? Ben, let's start on your end.
Well, I'm looking at the promoted 3 and Plymouth and Blackburn, but I only think one of the promoted 3, or maybe 2. Those are my 5. I think we're fairly. I accept your argument about Watford and the trend, but I think it's between those 5.
Okay.
I've gone for Plymouth, Derby, and Oxford for me.
I think I had Blackburn, Derby, and Plymouth as well. Sorry, Wayne.
Yeah, I've gone Plymouth, Derby, and Watford.
Blackburn, Plymouth, Oxford.
Touch on Watford going down there because that's quite the prediction there, Justin.
There's quite a big drain of quality. Good youngsters coming through, but again, you're asking a lot of players. You've got a rookie manager in Tom Cleverley, who I rate quite highly, but the circumstances being dealt with are just a lot. Unless there's a huge influx of transfers, which when you owners are asking to borrow money from fans to pay for them, it's a big thing. So yeah, I can't see too much changing with Watford for me to push my.
There's a lot of exciting forwards in the Championship this year, so we'll move on to a Golden Boot winner. I think it could be quite a high total this year. Don't know why, just got a feeling. Gab?
Emmanuel Latte-Lath for me. I'm really excited about him playing in a really exciting attacking Middlesbrough side with maybe Finazaz feeding him through.
I'll cross that one off then.
I'll go the other home run. Josh Sargent. It's just his goals to game ratio. It's just ridiculous. And if he 16 and 28 last season, an extra 12 games, he's going to score more.
I think Carlton Morris or Ellis Sims.
Yeah.
Don't you think Sims and Wright are going to split the goals, which will stop either of them being top scorer?
It's going to be very interesting because Hadji Wright has been really poor when he's played down the middle, and the only reason results started picking up is because we played him on the left wing, and he's so much better running into the box, scoring goals like that. But
no, it's a good
we've
rebuttal.
signed Efron Mason-Clark, and you have to say he's likely to start on the left. So it's good problems to have. I think Sims is pretty nailed on to start though.
I'll say Carlton Morris for me, behind confidence from last season. So yeah,
I've only got 2 names left because they've stolen the other 2. Wouldn't it be hilarious if the Rhian Brewster that turned up for Swansea on loan turned up for Sheffield United? And wouldn't it be brilliant if Macaulay Langstaff, who Gab will know way more about than me, turned up to Millwall and in a 4-4 F2 with Neil Harris and banged in? Okay, he'd probably need it to be 23 rather than the 30 you're probably predicting, but it's hard not to go with Latte-Lath. And I don't think it'll be Sargent. I don't think Sargent will end the season at Norwich.
Ooh, I mean, if he plays till January, he'll still be a good shout for Golden Boots.
Mitrovic totally.
Very good. Into the dugouts now. Manager of the season. It tends to come from a promoted team, but I'm happy to hear other shouts if you think we're going to have a bit of a surprise package.
Danny Rowe.
Surely it'll be Reggie Labrie, won't it?
Yeah.
Couldn't not be.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
Unless Danny Roll is taking the Sunderland job.
And maybe, yeah, that'd make it work, yeah.
If Mark Robbins gets Coventry promoted, I don't think you can look past it.
I'll be very boring and say Daniel Farker because I think Leeds are going to win the league and that's usually how it goes.
I went for Mark Robbins as well. If they go up, then no doubt about it.
I'll go Daniel Farker in the same boring reasoning.
It's very boring of us, Ben. Player of the season.
We predicted Sunderland to win the league, to get relegated. We are not boring.
Player of the season. So, yeah. I mean, Ben, let's start with you. Standout player of this championship season.
I'm going to go boring again because I had a look back. Since sort of Phil Jagielka is always an attacker from a promoted team. So maybe if Georgie Ruta stays and becomes more clinical, and then the 2 wingers at Burnley, if they do what they did last time, Zaroury and Benson. So that's terribly boring, but
that's good.
Fairly likely.
I went for Ruta for mine as well. I think he does go missing quite a lot in certain games, but if he keeps the form where he was in last season when Leeds were in form as well, then I think you can't really look past him for me.
I see Leeds sharing around the goals a bit.
Yeah.
So I'll go Carlton Morris. If he gets Luton up, I see him scoring a good chunk.
I'll book the trend. Ben's right to mention Phil Jagielka.
Are you saying Phil Jagielka?
Oh, yeah, come out of
Phil
retirement.
Jagielka is going to sign for Sunderland and win Player of the Year. Yeah?
Need experience. But no, I think I'm going to go with Ethan Ampadu. I don't think that Leeds team ticks in the best way possible without him in that midfield. So stick him in midfield. He plays every single minute. He's a sure bet for, at least being in conversation for it.
Jack Clark, if he stays.
Very, very sensible. Now we'll move on to flop of the season. We've mentioned a few people we're a little concerned about. This can be a player or a manager or a team in general, just that you're going to be a little disappointed in. Justin, Gab, any thoughts on this?
I mean, Watford, if they get relegated, would be flop potential.
Tom Cleverley.
No,
is that a bit harsh?
Probably a bit harsh because he's a rookie. I think if I think if Chris Wilder ends up getting sacked, he makes a lot of noise. That would be quite a significant flop, I think, because he does talk a lot.
I don't think the Scott Parker appointment's going to go to plan.
That is a good one because he's coming down with a relegated team, not coming down, but taking charge.
Yeah.
A parachute team. Yep.
It's really hard. A parachute team, we will get a Tom Cannon or something where they'll spend a ton of money on August the 29th on a panic buy and never play them. But that's a very fudge of an answer.
I went for a player, so I went for Aronson at Leeds.
Yeah.
I think he was awful in the Premier League. Too lightweight. Can't cope with the physicality of the English league at all. So, yeah, like a new signing for them as well. So
Interesting. So he's expected to come into their team and play.
he's been playing pre-season. So yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Let's move on to surprise package. Let's get some positivity in here. Gab, are you going for? I mean, you can't say. Can you say Sunderland? I guess you can.
Well, Sunderland and Sheffield Wednesday. I think Sheffield Wednesday would be brilliant.
And I mean, I think if Oxford stay up, that would be quite a surprise to everybody. But I think a team pushing, lower down table probably wouldn't qualify for that. But I'll go with Preston. I think there's a lot of noise negatively about them, but actually, I'm quite, encouraged by their attacking potential, what they've got in the squad at the moment.
I'll go Oxford and Portsmouth because I think they'll both stay up, and I think that'll be surprising.
I'll go QPR for mine.
Okay. What are you expecting from there? Is that top half playoffs or?
I'd say about mid-table for them.
Okay.
But say if sort of higher in this mid-table, definitely. Better than relegation last season.
And I've got Wayne Rooney to still be the Plymouth manager, August the 1st, 2025.
Okay, very good. Talking of managers, who do we think is going to be the first one sacked? This is a tough one. This is sacked, not leaves the club. Danny Roll style mid-season for a Premier League team. Gab?
I don't like to predict who's going to be sacked, so I'm going to avoid that question. But to put it another way, I do think Tim Walter. Mixed reviews from Germany. Difficult situation in terms of the rebuild at Hull. A lot of key players leaving. I think he's got a tough job on his hands.
I'll go with Paul Warne. I'll jump straight in. I just think a poor start might spook the owner David.
He's more likely to walk than with the emotions than get sacked.
Yeah, it's a fair point. So I might disqualify him from that. But I think, as I say, I think a poor start will spook the owner.
I'll go Ryan Lowe. I think I've talked about Preston enough and been negative enough.
Yeah, I can't see past Rooney for me, to be honest. I just think if they start poorly, then he's gone.
And that's probably the end of his EFL managing career.
I'd say he can't. He's not coming back from that shortly.
I'm similar to Gab. I don't like calling people out to lose their job, but I like criticising owners, and I'll raise Mr. Illichali at Hull, Mr. Tan at Cardiff, and Mr. Pozzo at Watford as the most likely owners to sack their managers before the international break number 2 in October.
Well, that's well skewed away.
Thank you, Gab. Been doing this a long time. So have you.
2 more categories: young player of the season or emerging talent. Potentially, we haven't heard too much about this season. Ben, let's start you and go this way.
I've got Chris Rigg down.
Oh, damn it.
Although I said that last season, he just spiked all our levels with that reaction. And Gassama from Sheffield Wednesday, the winger.
Gone for Mateo Joseph at Leeds. I think he's been quite good for his season. Scored 3 goals, I think, so far. 2 against Schalke, 1 against Hanover. So, yeah.
He's very
What
high
was
up on
me?
the
And-
golden boot odds.
Yeah, well, he might start for Leeds first game of the season. So, yeah,
Mark,
watch out for
Did
him.
you have another name there?
No,
No, that's cool. I'll say randomly that Blackburn 16-year-old whose name I can't remember who you said before.
Igor Tijon, I think it is.
He gets 5 goals in the Championship this season.
Yeah, let's throw him off a little bit. No, I think the name that came to my head was Romain S. I think he's a player who's not quite fulfilled the potential that we saw of him under Gary Rowett. I think under Neil Harris, where they're going to be playing their backs against the wall, going to rely a lot on pace out wide. I think he could have a spark this season.
Well, I was going to say Chris Rigg, but I'll go for another Sunderland player, Joe Bellingham. I think he'd still count in that sort of category. And I think he's got so much talent. And I also really like the fact that he's got Job on the back of his shirt rather than Bellingham, as he sort of tried to carve his own path. And I really like that. So for me, Joe Bellingham.
Do you think his brother is or kind of what he's done is negatively impacting his career? When you
No, because I think he's actually handled it so well by sort of saying, I am my own person, and sort of kind of distancing himself in one way, which I think is a really positive thing, a really healthy thing for him to do. So I'm expecting big things under Reggie Libri.
Brilliant. And we're going to finish this championship preview with our hot take of the season. Something wild, something unexpected that you think is going to happen in the championship this season that we can get on camera and bring out in May to prove you right. Gab.
Sunderland with the lead.
It doesn't get hotter than that, does it?
Cool, come on then, Justin. What's your big one?
Yeah, Gab's gone hot. I'm going to go Stoke to knock on the door of the top 6 with 6 games to go.
Never back Stoke. It never
With
ends
6
well.
games to go, and then what happens?
Well, yeah, it could either go very Stoke, or it could go very Preston, or it could go very Coventry. You know, they can either make that step up, or they drop off and fade away. But I think Stoke in the top half in its own is a hot take. But just to give a little bit of depth to it, I like the squad that they've got. I think it's looking more balanced than it has done in previous years. They've not, they have thrown money at it, but they haven't thrown sort of Benicophobe money at it. There's been a bit more of a pragmatism. There's been news of the John Coates taking over the football club, moving away from Bet365 a little bit, which again, this probably settles things behind the scenes. I just think all the roads are pointing in the right direction for a change under Stoke currently. So that's my hot take.
Okay. I'll go. Coventry are the top scorers in the league. They score at least 92 goals, which is 2 a game.
Jesus.
Their attack's phenomenal. We know that. They've scored 3 goals against Wolves in the FA Cup in 90 minutes. Man United in the FA Cup. Yeah. It was pre-season, but we also scored 3 goals against Everton.
Simon. Phenomenal's a strong word, isn't it?
No. No, but just you wake up.
Okay, but it's not like having Ellis Sims up top is not the same as having Victor Gyökeres in terms of like a known quantity.
No, but we're also not attacking with one man. We're attacking with. I don't know how many Sims will score, but I think we'll have multiple scorers in.
I
in double
agree,
digits.
but to use the word phenomenal and to say you're going to score 2 goals a game.
It's a hot take.
So I'd say Sheffield United to finish 18th.
Oh, Jesus.
There's a lot of unrest with the ownership at the moment that can cause issues with the players, managers, whatever. They don't know what's going to happen.
Is there a Bradford-Sheffield rivalry?
There's not. No, one of my best friends is a Sheffield United fan. No, but yeah, that's my hot take.
Brilliant.
So I've come up with a playoff glass ceiling that all 4 of the playoff teams are going to have already been in the playoffs the previous 2 seasons. I think we're going to get a lot of repetition, not so much Norwich and West Brom, but I can see 2 years ago, Luton, Coventry, Middlesbrough, Sunderland. But imagine it was just the same 4 from 2 years ago. And if Leeds didn't quite get it right, although I think they probably will be top 2, but so what I'm saying is no new faces in the playoffs. Boring whatsoever.
We've seen something similar in League One, haven't we, over the last 2 seasons?
Barnsley,
Peterborough
and Bolton.
all
Yeah.
lose. If they lose again in the playoffs, then who knows what. Right, let's wrap it up there. Thank you all very much for joining me on this championship special. We've got so much to look forward to this season, Sunderland fans in particular, but that is all. We'll see you next time on the Sportsman Untitled.